What's up, everyone? So in today's episode of Darknet Dialogues, we're going to spotlight a threat actor who goes by the name of 888. He's a figure who has kind of carved out a pretty formidable reputation in the Darknet Underground, we'll say, as a threat actor. For a while now, 888 has actually been linked to a series of fairly high-profile data breaches. And when I say a series, I mean more than I can actually list here. If you want, you can go onto my website and you'll see if you put 888 at the end, a good list of some of them. But just to mention a few, they're Microsoft, BMW, Hong Kong, UNICEF, Shell, and Credit Suisse. Operating primarily through BreachForums, the now defunct BreachForums, 888 is known for leaking sensitive data, including personal and corporate information, often accompanied by data samples to actually validate his claims. So, first off, hello and welcome. State your name and rank. I'm just kidding. Seeing as Intel Broker was actually the first threat actor that I had on, I figured that you would definitely make sense as a follow-up, to the legend himself, who I personally think has retired. But anyways, let's start off by, what is the actual story behind your alias 888? Like, why that name?
There isn't really a specific reason. When BreachForums 2.0 launched, I needed a new alias to operate under. I just picked it because it looked clean.
Keeping it clean and simple absolutely makes sense. Now, when you actually work, do you prefer to do it as a lone wolf, or are you more of like a, team member kind of guy?
Most of my breaches are done alone. However, I don't necessarily have a preference. Working alone or as a team is both equally rewarding.
So, not everyone listening has been a member of a hacking group, right? Can you tell us what it's actually like to start off as a nobody and come to that first group?
My initial goal was not to gain reputation or become well known, but as time passed, I started breaching more high-profile companies and gradually started gaining recognition. So it made sense joining.
Now, the first hacking group that you were actually part of, did you approach them or did they approach you? Is there any initiation or tests that you had to actually pass in order to get in? Or was it more like a, you have a good resume, welcome kind of deal? Like, what was the actual process like?
There are usually a list of requirements to meet before joining the group. Only a selective few can join. As for me, I was invited to join, so I did.
Simple enough. Do you think that you have to actually know how to code in order to be a good hacker?
You can still pull off breaches without having to code. It just takes time, effort, and experience. Knowing how to code will also definitely help.
Okay, so let's say today is your first day in the actual threat landscape. You're restarting all over again and nobody actually knows you. What are the first three things that you do and why?
Build connections, stay active, and don't do anything that can compromise your OPSEC. These things should be set as a foundation rule to follow.
So on BreachForums, your icon was Roger Rabbit. Why? How did you end up coming up with or actually using that?
I had the default profile picture for a while and decided it was time for a change. I wanted something unique, that's why.
Now, it said that there are, more than a few motives, obviously, for hacking besides just the love of computers. You have the threat actor who does it for adrenaline. You also have the guy who does it for money. There's also revenge and politics. Why do you do it? Did that motive actually change after you started doing it?
My only motive is money. I'm not interested in breaching for so-called revenge or over any form of politics.
Makes it simple that way, I guess. It's kind of like a hitman or something. How long have you actually been active in the hacking scene in general? How did you actually start and what actually triggered your interest in computers to begin with?
I've been around the hacking scene for several years. mainly operating under different aliases. Gaining access to protected systems is definitely what interested me from the beginning.
I remember as a little kid taking clocks apart and stuff to figure out how they work. So that makes sense. I think everyone starts with that initial kind of fascination. So the next question would be like, what does a typical day actually look like for a guy like you as a threat actor, specifically?
I have a regular daily routine like most people. Only difference is mine involves a lot of coffee consumption.
I don't know, man. I think I might have you beat on that one, Like, in that case, if that's what defines, that's a defining trait of a threat actor. Maybe I am one too. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I run on coffee. Get back to the matter at hand. Like, do you start with a particular goal in mind when you actually got into hacking, like in general, or do you have any like particular point where you actually think you'll retire, right? Like, is there any kind of hard goal that you have set?
I had no set goal when I started off. As for retirement, I don't have a specific timeline on when I'll retire since that's not something I have in mind.
You have a laundry list of actual exploits from, Microsoft to BMW to Alpha Capital Group. Like, nobody could really accuse you of not being well-rounded if that was ever an issue. What could another threat actor actually accuse you of that would actually have some truth to it?
The fact I'm extremely racist.
Okay. I wouldn't, given the name of the group and the status of, the shout box or how I remember it, I would not doubt any of that. Have you ever actually compromised the system and chosen not to actually leak it? And if you did, why was that?
Yes, to a certain extent. For the vast majority of the time, I will leak the data that I've breached, but if there is hospital data or patient data to be more specific, then I'll avoid leaking it.
So I would imagine that you get a lot of hate. Have people ever actually given you criticism or skepticism kind of directly about what it is that you actually do?
Sure. A few have criticized what I do is unethical since it damages the reputation and the trust users have in companies. That's not something that's going to stop me or change my mind. It's just something they'll have to get used to.
That makes sense. When I talked to Intel Broker, he really disliked ransomware gangs in general from what I saw. What's your particular take on ransomware gangs?
It's not worth it for the most part. Companies are very unlikely going to pay the ransom you demand, which is why most ransomware groups don't last for long periods of time. Even if it lasts, there's no point.
So what are the top 3 things that you would say people actually get wrong about OPSEC in general?
The fact that they believe they can achieve perfect OPSEC, relying on third-party platforms that promise them anonymity as well as using the same alias throughout different online communities.
At the end of the day, nobody is impervious. It's very well said. So do you actually worry about being de-anonymized or arrested?
Of course. That's why my main priority is focusing on my OPSEC. I cannot risk making errors, even if it's something small.
So, okay, building off that then, like, say tomorrow, everyone around you found out about what it is that you actually do. Like, what do you think they would say?
I don't plan on disclosing what I do. These things are better if kept as a secret, since there's usually more harm than good that can come from it.
So, hypothetical situation. Say 2 years has gone by. Are you still doing what you're doing now?
Yes, it's possible. I can still see myself doing what I'm currently doing now in the near future. Although I do sometimes experience burnouts, it's still a bit early to comment on that decision.
When you initially became a threat actor, when you actually made that decision to be one, did you do so with a contingency plan or like an exit plan of any kind?
There is no exit plan. The only plan is to not get caught.
If you could send one word, say, or one message, we'll go with that, to governments or corporations that were actually watching this, what would that message be?
You're all evil and deserve to get punished.
So you were a mod on BreachForums. Why did you do that? Why become a moderator?
The forum needed some tidying up and removal of users that take from the forum without giving back any form of contribution. It was the right time to take action. I decided it would be best to invest some time on the forum and help out the community.
Community service is important, man. I 100% agree with that. On average, what's a day like in the life of a moderator on a forum like BreachForums? If it were still up and running, that is.
A lot of daily reports to deal with. It does take up some time, mainly going through the reports and ban appeals, I'd say, as they come in quite frequently.
So as a lot of people know, it's offline, right? BreachForums has been offline for a minute now, but what for you would be the top 3 alternatives that you would advise or like you would use or that you like once BreachForums became unavailable?
Kisses.is, cracked.esh, and exploit.in.
No doubt. So have you ever feel guilty, like, or kind of second guess actually releasing data of a specific leak that you actually did?
The data I breached from UNICEF for sure. I did end up leaking certain parts of it, though, mainly the data containing information on the administration of UNICEF as well as the facilities and where they work.
So obviously credibility comes in many forms. What does credibility actually mean to you as a threat actor involved in the scene? Like, how is it earned and how can it be destroyed?
Credibility is the level of trust a community has in you. It can be earned through constant contribution. As for losing it, it really varies. Something as simple as scamming is enough to ruin that level of trust.
Yeah, that's significantly difficult to actually get. It's infinitely easy to lose. So if you weren't actually in this line of work, what do you think you'd actually be doing instead of this? Like, is there some kind of like normal life that you ever picture?
I have thought about it. A normal life would be nice. Unfortunately, making such a transition from what I'm currently doing is going to be difficult.
So I know personally there's a ton of stuff that I've messed up or done wrong that, you know, in hindsight's 2020, it's easy to go back and be like, oh, I could have done this or that wrong. But what's a skill that you actually learned late in the game that you wish you could have mastered at an earlier point?
The art of racism.
Can you describe a time when a hack didn't actually go as planned? And what, if anything, did you learn from it? Like, how did you adapt to solve whatever went wrong?
The Royal Mail breach. I began exfiltrating data from a contractor that works directly with them and lost access incredibly fast. After trying to regain access, it appeared the access had been completely cut off. It was a shame.
As a threat actor, how do you actually keep your skills sharp? Are there any kind of routines or challenges, without being too specific, or exercises that you do to try to stay sharp, stay focused?
Without getting into too many details, I do a mix of different things. I like to stay consistent. It definitely helps me with what I do.
In engagements, there's going to be times when you have to actually make your own tools for possibly unique scenarios. Have you personally ever had to invent or improvise a tool or method because nothing actually out there did what you actually needed to do at that time?
There have been situations where I've had to improvise a specific method for certain breaches since it was the only viable option at the time. Improvisation is important.
I personally have never been really a fan of elitism as it is in the hacking scene in general. But what's your view on gatekeeping in the hacking scene? Like, do you think it helps maintain quality or does it hurt newcomers? Like, and I do concede that there are definitely qualities about it that are valuable personally. Anyways, my apologies. Go ahead.
Gatekeeping is needed to a certain degree. It's better to learn yourself, especially if you're new to hacking. You shouldn't solely rely on others or depend on someone to learn from.
You clearly made a name for yourself, but how important is reputation in your world versus things like actual skill?
Skill is by far more important. Reputation should not be a main goal. Your reputation will increase as you demonstrate your skills with the breaches you carry out.
Practice makes perfect. Yeah, I'm sure that makes sense. What kind of posts or behaviors immediately make you suspicious of someone that's pretending to be a hacker?
Constantly posting breaches of other threat actors and claiming it as their own. Things like this makes it a dead giveaway.
All right, so if you had total impunity for one attack, what would you hit and why?
BlackRock for sure. They are American and should not be trusted by any means.
What are some of the top things that you actually wish people on the outside understood about threat actors that maybe they don't?
The fact that we all have bad intentions. Some do it for money, some for attention, and some purely do it for entertainment. Everyone has their own reasons.
What about AI? Like, do you think that AI is changing hacking for the better or for the worse? Are you personally using it?
I don't personally use AI with any form of hacking. All the breaches I have conducted are from skills I have attained myself. It's more natural that way.
What would have to happen, say, tomorrow for you to walk away from this life altogether?
Nothing can get me to leave, but even if I do leave somehow, there's still going to be complications, especially since the Cyberniggers group is under the surveillance of Five Eyes. It just adds another layer of things to be precautious about.
Has there ever been another threat actor that you looked up to or like learned from, like a mentor or something?
It definitely has to be Kevin Mitnick. He would be the threat actor that inspired me.
Intel Broker said the same thing. What are some of the stupidest mistakes that you've seen others make as actual attackers on the offense?
Attacking a company with little to zero effort put into their OPSEC. Bad OPSEC will get you eventually. It's just a matter of time.
100% agreed. It's like people who learn OSINT without learning about OPSEC. I 100% agree with that. What's one piece of advice that you'd give to yourself, like your younger self, before you ever even touched a line of code or joined any forums?
Get used to the fact that a lot of the hacking forums you'll use are temporary and can get taken down in an instance with no prior notice.
And really the key question to that is, would you start all over again? Would you do it all over again if you had to?
It would be unfortunate. If it means doing it all again, perhaps. Things like this have become normal now, considering how many times these types of forums have been seized at this point.
So if this were, for example, the last message that you were ever to give, publicly as 888, what would you specifically want to be remembered for?
A racist.
Is there anything you'd want your adversaries or law enforcement or corporations or security researchers to hear directly from you?
The fact you've shown interest in my work is much appreciated.
I think threat actors that's like my football teams, Yes. Yeah, some people follow football. I take an interest in threat actors, not as much as like a cyber threat intelligence analyst, but I definitely think that they're more interesting than darknet markets in any case, for what it's worth. Any final words to the people who've followed your work from the sidelines, fans, critics, otherwise?
Yes. Have a nice day.
I very much enjoyed conducting this interview. I really appreciate 888 taking the time to go back and forth and have this dialogue. For those of you that are not familiar with this work, there are a lot of precautions that are taken in order to secure the security of the people that we interview here on the podcast. And that's to ensure that there are no additional attack vectors that are overwhelming when it comes to them actually giving interviews. I hope you guys found it interesting. I would love to hear your thoughts or feedback on this particular interview. If you'd like to share them, feel free in the comments. In any case, thank you for watching. As always, I'll see you in the next video.